Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. We're here to talk about Night of the Ghoul number 4. This is the book from Scott Snyder's Best Jacket Press, where he collaborates with Francesco Francavilla. It's the horror book, but it's not. It's not horror in terms of like slasher film, gory, a lot of blood, and body horror or anything like that. This is a much more classic feeling horror story where the tension and the drama build up slowly, but the concept itself is pretty terrifying. And if you think about it too much, you will freak out. Freak out. One of those stories like gives you that tingling feeling down the back of your spine when you're walking down the hallway at night and all the lights are off and you're like, is there somebody behind me? That feeling? That's the feeling you get from reading Night of the Ghoul. And fantastic cover there from Francavilla. If you're checking us out on YouTube, you can see it. This ghoul about to climb out of the mouth of a corpse. So I really enjoyed this fourth issue. We get a lot of the film because it is a dual narrative, telling us what's happening in real time, also telling us what happened in the classic Night of the Ghoul horror film, which because of the Order of the Fly that worshipped the ghoul, they were able to sabotage it and prevent that movie from being released, and widespread knowledge of the ghoul kind of disseminating among the population. So, yeah, a lot to unpack in this issue. What did you think, Rocky?
Yeah, I thought there was yeah, it was there was a lot of setup here. Was a lot of setup, but it continues the story. What Scott Snyder does very well here, which artist Francesco Francavilla does an amazing job with, is we get that juxtaposition of going from the past, of showing us bits and pieces of the film, but also bits and pieces of what happened with the director of Night of the Ghoul. When he was a young boy, his father was sort of possessed by the ghoul, and the efforts made with his the old army buddies of his father, helping him to try to sort of exorcise him, to to basically get the ghoul out of him, and their efforts to do that with the help of a woman from a museum who tells them the mythology and the history of the ghoul going back centuries. And it's 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 very well done in terms of setting up exactly why it is so terrifying. And in the present, uh sorry, I'm having some difficulties accessing it on Comixology here, but in the frustrating aspect of the present storyline is we have this father and son who've gone to visit this director in this, I guess, this institution or this hospital, and he knows they want to. The father here, he just wants to be able to get the remaining film, and to release it to the world. And he still hasn't fully understood just how serious it is, of how horrifying it is, of what's going on. But at the end of the last issue, he saw the staff basically beat the hell out of the director. And he realizes that the director was right. Everything that the director's been telling him is essentially correct. That he's been abused. I mean, the one of the doctors actually pukes maggots all over him. Uh, this is, again, just hammered home. I mean, this director now, I mean, he's old, he's dilapidated, he's dying in this hospital. He's got this burnt face that Francavilla just nails. It's always a horror element. We got subdued colors of sort of like an off blue, black, and red, and the burnt face of the director. And meanwhile, the son is waiting in the car for the father to come back out, but the son doesn't want to wait. And so the son goes looking for his goes looking for his dad, and he ends up in a cave, in a hole. He falls down a well, and clearly the ghoul has already infected them in some way. And it's not even clear how the ghoul infects you. I mean, because it's not, they've presumably they've maybe watched bits and pieces of parts of the film that they have gotten, but it's the son has done research on the ghoul, and the father's done research on the ghoul, And of course, the director made the movie Night of the Ghoul, so you understand why maybe how the ghoul infected him. But how exactly does the ghoul get around? How does the story of the ghoul? It seems like the more you spread the story, the more powerful the ghoul becomes. So there's almost like a magical, supernatural element about it, where it's powered by belief. That if you spread the rumor, whether it's through a movie or through word of mouth or through story, the ghoul becomes more powerful. And you really see that sort of playing out here, as both the father and the son, they don't really believe it, that they don't really believe in the boogeyman, so to speak. But boy, oh boy, what they're experiencing, the ghoul is everywhere, and it really builds up the tension. And again, that going back and forth between the past and the present, showing bits and pieces of the film along with the experiences of this of the director when he was a young boy, dealing with his father who's possessed by this ghoul, and their efforts to try to get this ghoul out of their father. Again, this is all set up, and there's again, it's a huge cliffhanger here in terms of what is going to happen with the boy that with the son that falls down the well. What happened to the director's father? What ultimately, what's going to be the fate of this would be director who wants to release this film and retrieve this Night of the Ghoul film, the original cut, from the director who's in this hospital under a pseudonym, under a different name. I mean, it again, it really works. It pulls you in. It's been a long time since I read a comic book, a horror comic, that pulls me into the extent that this does in such a powerful way. And this really cries out in my mind that I know that it's cliche that we always get different types of horror movies, but this I think would be a great horror movie. I mean, I just give this to a director like Quentin Tarantino and let him go to town. I think this would be a fantastic horror movie. But no, I'm enjoying this, and it ends again. This ends on a cliffhanger. You know, I keep thinking that there's no way that they're going to defeat the ghoul. He's too powerful, but you never know. Snyder might surprise us, but Snyder also has an affinity for embracing darkness most of the time. Although he did surprise us a little bit with his ending for We Are Demons, which ended on a high note.
Yeah, it's a good point. There's a couple of things. I mean, let me nitpick first. So yeah, we do see. So the son had seen some things inside the hospital that made him think that there was something horrific going on, right? And last issue, when he mentioned it to his father, then the director of the facility took him, hey, we have a morgue here. Unfortunately, children die. That's all he saw, trying to pull the wool over his eyes. With this particular issue, it's all out in the open. Like Rocky said, it ended on a cliffhanger last time of the father seeing these maggots being vomited onto the director. So it's all out in the open. He calls his son. He tells him to call the police. That's the one thing that gets me. Like, I don't understand. Like, the son is somewhat safe inside the Bronco that they drove there, and his mother gets a hold of him. She's worried. Then his father calls and says, hey, call the police. Terrible things are happening inside. And then the next panel we see, the son has left the car, and there's some kind of creatures with red eyes chasing him. Like, did you actually, number one, did you actually call the police? And why did you get out of the car? Like, I get that you're worried about your dad, but I sure to heck hope you called the police first. Not that I think the police are going to really be able to help that much if they show up and the ghoul has, been unleashed or what have you. So I'm just not wasn't sure about that. Maybe chalk it up to the folly of youth. Just
Yeah.
not sure. The other thing that I liked about it, um, another little moment, and this kind of goes the other way. I really enjoyed it. The story, as much as it's a horror story, there has been um, this idea of the father not being a good father, not being there for his son, and we know the mother's has some health issues that may shorten her life, and so there's that sort of dynamic going on as well. When the father gets what he's been searching for, what he has in a lot of ways dedicated the last part of his life to, what he feels will finally make his success, his success. This is the brass ring, quote unquote, that he's been searching for. He's a film restorationist, and he's been looking for the full film of the Night of the Ghoul so he can restore it and release it, and in his mind that will make him successful, right? That will make him not only successful professionally, but in the eyes of his son, in the eyes of his estranged wife. He actually finds that. He finds it in the office of the director in the safe. The director, or the office of the director of the facility is what I mean, not the film director. So when he finds it in that safe, that's it. That's the brass ring. That's the thing he's been looking for all this time. And even though he gets his hands on that, he's reached his final goal. When he hears his son in trouble, his son who's snuck back into the facility and it appears to be underneath in kind of these catacombs, when he hears his son calling for him, he drops everything. He even though that's the goal, that's the thing that's been in front of him, the thing he's been striving for years. When he hears his son is in trouble, that becomes his priority. And I really liked that emotional beat from Snyder and Francavilla because it shows that even though this guy thought, or we thought as readers, that this guy's priorities were kind of skewed, when push comes to shove, his son is what matters most. So I really enjoyed that. And then the last couple of pages, like Rocky was saying, how it goes back and forth between what's happening in present day and the film. I just want to point out the last page as the director of the film is, recounting, trying to exorcise the ghoul from his father. We see a really horrific image, which sort of mirrors the image we see on the front cover. And yeah, we get the to be continued. So that is a fantastic and terrifying image. But again, this never gets gory or bloody, or it builds tension and drama in different ways. And Rocky made a really good point about the fact that they keep giving us these cliffhangers, and that's what the best horror stories do, right? They they'll give you a cliffhanger, they'll give you a question. In the next issue, you'll get the answer, but then they give you another one that where the tensions ratcheted up even higher. I mean, we're based on this last image here. It looks like in the next issue we may get a good look at the ghoul for the first time, and in a way that's scary to this horrific legendary monster whose existence at different times in its life cycle has given rise to other myths like vampires and werewolves and all that. Uh, that's just yeah, that's that's scary. It's scary to think we're gonna see the ghoul for the first time. So yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest horror guy. Anybody who listens to the podcast will know that, but I'm hooked on this one for sure.
Yeah. One of the things that really stands out for me, and just as a commentary on Snyder in general, you look at one thing that Night of the Ghoul focuses on is a father-son relationship. We see the relationship between the director when he was young and his father, where the young director tries to save his father from the ghoul. We see the older would-be filmographer wanting to. He searches half his life for this Night of the Ghoul, and he's got a dysfunctional relationship with his wife and his son. The father-son dynamic is very powerful here. We also saw that in Clear. Clear deals with the relationship of losing a child in that in that comic book, and then in We Are Demons, we have the relationship of Lamb and Cash in in the context of the Horn and the Halo fighting fighting demons themselves, and so that the parent-child dynamic and that parent-child relationship it underscores a lot of Scott Snyder's Comixology stories, that parent-child dynamic and the relationship between the two. And I know Scott is a father himself, and he's often posting on Instagram pictures. He clearly loves his son and he's a family man, and and this is really a great example of a writer. I love seeing that because it's clearly it's obvious what he's passionate about in his private life, and that's obviously his family. And you can really see that he's bringing some of those elements here in the story, and it makes for better stories because it really really works here. Because what underscores the power of Night of the Ghoul is the father-son dynamic, those relationships, just as it did for Clear and We Are Demons, and it works really well. And hey man, when something isn't broke, don't fix it. And he's on a roll here, and I'm just really enjoying this.
Yeah, and we talked about the artwork, several times. I'll point it out one more time here as we're closing up. Nobody else should draw this comic, right? I mean, this is the perfect artist to have drawn this. Francavilla, he's doing his own color work, he's doing the line work, the sense of storytelling. He knows when to go big, so to speak. He knows when to be a little more subdued, and the color work. The film tends to be more in black and white or sort of these brown sepia tones when we see the film in the pages of the comic, as opposed to present day where I won't go so far as to say things are colorized, but it's a different aesthetic. More varied colors. Um, but you really get a sense of Francavilla's ability to convey horror in the faces of the characters. When they're shocked and they're scared and they're terrified. He does a fantastic job. So yeah, this is very nearly the perfect horror comic in my mind, and tension keeps building. And it's definitely not a fast-paced story. It's a slow burn, but that's what allows them to go, story beat, cliffhanger, story beat, cliffhanger. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this. Can't wait for the next part.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I gotta say, Snyder here he's nailing the cliffhangers on this stuff. So I mean, he's as long as he keeps doing this. I mean, I've never considered myself much of a digital person per se, but I definitely I got more into Comixology because of Snyder and because of reviewing these issues with you. And boy, it really does matter when you have a great writer.
Yeah.
It really does. I mean, because a different writer, I might have been less inclined to take that subscription to Comixology. But no, this is absolutely, even if you're not into horror, but you're just curious, or you're thinking that a horror comic can't be as good as a horror movie. Don't kid yourself. Check this out. Check this out. This is very well done, and I think you're just inclined, if you're one of those people that can get scared watching Nightmare on Elm Street or Scream, or I'm convinced that if you can get scared from a movie, you can create fear within yourself by reading Night of the Ghoul. You really can. I'm not saying I'm scared, but I'm just saying that I did go to I did leave the light on last night when I was after my wife went to bed, and I watched movies. So every now and then, you need a good scare. I mean, it keeps us human. Reminds us that it reminds us that we're not. It's not all roses and rainbows.
Yeah, I would definitely say that for the majority of people, you're probably reading this with the light on. I would agree. I would agree with that. Unless you want to be even more scared. So, anyway, be sure you're subscribing to the Comic Boom channel. That's Rocky's place on YouTube, Comic Space Boom exclamation point, where you can check out all these collaborations. Be sure you ring the notification bell so you know when new content comes out, and like this video. Conversely, if you usually check us out on the Comic Boom website and you want to be sure you don't miss out on any of the audio only content from the Comic Source, just go to your favorite podcasting platform or podcasting app on your smart device, do a search for the Comic Source, and subscribe so you don't miss out. We have some more fantastic interviews coming for you really, really soon. So we really appreciate you guys joining us as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you later.